My name is Shannon Gallo. I'm the manager of career services at the CUNY School of Professional Studies. We appreciate you joining us for this evening's programming, Networking and Connecting for Career Success, professional development webinar. As I said, I'm the manager of career services here at CUNY SPS. I look forward to speaking with all of you this evening about networking and connecting and all of those kinds of important things, especially in the type of job market that we're experiencing now. Networking is probably one of the most crucial facets of a job search and professional development. We are offering captions, live captions for the webinar. If you would like to take advantage of those, there's a link in the chat where you can access them through Zoom. The agenda and we also are recording the presentation portion of the webinar, and that recording will be made available along with the slides to all of you following our webinar. First, I'll cover personal branding and networking. I'll talk about networking with awareness, in particular in virtual settings. I will talk about the personal pitch, the pitch simplified. Then we'll do some breakouts where we can practice what I've just talked about with the pitch and do a little bit of virtual networking live during the webinar. And then I'll follow that with some pointers for links at the end. If you have questions that come up during the presentation, feel free to send them in, or you can hold off until the very end and then send them in at that point. So without any further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. Networking with awareness. This is important, as I had mentioned, especially in a job market where there are a lot of changes occurring. Lots of people, you may have heard the term, the Great Resignation. A lot of people are making career changes. They are moving away from one job and into another job. There are lots and lots of employers who are seeking new talent. So this is now more than ever a very important time to be capable and comfortable with networking. And really, networking with awareness is basically enhancing connections with people and building relationships. Some of the most important ways that I suggest you can do this is to create a strategy. Really think like a product marketer, but the product is yourself. And, sort of create a strategy for communicating and setting your goals so that when you are looking to build your networks and build your relationships, you can ask for advice. You can heed that advice, and then you can share back with those individuals. I have many times described networking as a circle. And if you're asking someone for advice and heeding the advice and then sharing back with them, that sort of completes a circle of networking. The idea is that if you are asking others for help, then others will likely ask you for help. And it really works in a very cyclical manner. I've also used the phrase, networking, it's not what you know, it's who you know and who knows you. And I think that the same thing is true if you think about that in terms of asking others for advice and being open to helping others as well. Another important part of networking with awareness is being appreciative, saying thank you to someone that takes some time to talk with you, or expressing gratitude when someone has given you a piece of advice and you've shared back with them how you were able to put that advice into action. Thank them for the idea and really mean it. Finally, one of the most important things in networking is to follow up and be direct. So if you have spent some time talking with a person, they've given you advice, they've given you pointers for your resume, wait and make sure that you follow up with them. And as things progress with your job search or whatever professional development you're you're taking care of, make sure that you follow up with them and let them know how their advice has specifically helped you. You'll find that it goes a long way in their ability to help you again in the future. As things are beginning to open up a little more after 2 years of a lot of remote and virtual activity, it's important to still keep in mind that there is still a lot of that virtual and remote networking happening. So my suggestion is to continue to use this time wisely and do that networking in a remote setting, just as you might in an in-person setting. One of the easiest things to do to really be advantageous is to start from scratch. Don't try to start from scratch. Think about the people that you already know. Think about your classmates, your instructors, your colleagues, other people that already know you and understand your work and understand your abilities, and reconnect with them. Meet up virtually. Send a note to a person that you worked with in your previous position and say, hey, I was just thinking about the work we did together. We really had a great time and we were very successful in our work. It would be great to catch up, and schedule a time to FaceTime or to Zoom with someone and just ask them how they're doing. Find out what they're doing for their work now. Another great way to network remotely is to attend free online events, just like this one. It gives you an opportunity to learn, obviously, get your name out there, get your likeness out there, and really possibly meet new people in a low stakes virtual setting. Finally, using LinkedIn is crucial. I will talk a little bit about LinkedIn later on in the presentation today, but social media is also a very valuable tool for you, whether you're networking only in the professional sense or just in general trying to connect and reconnect with people. Sometimes you might reconnect with a person using Instagram or Facebook, and when you realize that it might be a good contact to have and a good relationship to build in a professional sense, you could shift it over to LinkedIn and see what kind of networking you're able to accomplish there. So now that I've talked a little bit about networking and given sort of an intro about networking, I'll now move into the section of tonight's webinar that is on the pitch. And if you've attended webinars in the past, you may have heard this previously about perfecting your pitch. A lot of people might refer to this as an elevator pitch or a personal branding statement or a 30-second pitch. The idea initially was, in calling it an elevator pitch, was that if you were to get on the elevator with the CEO or chair of your company, that you would be able to deliver a pitch about yourself to that person in the time it took to get from the lobby at the ground level all the way up to the C-suite on the top floor. The pitch is also a great way to answer a question that you typically hear in just about every job interview: tell me about yourself. Or if you're in a networking event or any type of social event and you're talking with people you don't know well, it can answer the question, what do you do? As I said before, you could call it a 30-second pitch. Sometimes it might last a little longer than 30 seconds, but not too much. I also have sometimes thought of this as your personal infomercial. It's a way to sort of describe yourself, your background, your skills, your experiences, and your goals. It can also be used on your LinkedIn profile as a summary or on your resume as a summary or profile statement. Finally, the pitch can also be modified in a way that it can be used in your introductory cover letters for your job search. So there's lots of different ways that you can use a pitch. And that's why I think it's one of the most important things to master when you are networking and trying to build your network and create lasting connections. So what I've done is broken the pitch into 4 parts. The first part is to tell them what you're doing. Pretty simple. The second part is to tell them what you were doing before this. So you tell them what you're doing, then you tell them what you were doing right before this. The third part is tell them what you want to do next. What's your objective? What's your goal? What are you looking for at this point? And finally, part 4, perhaps one of the most important things in your pitch, is to tell them something memorable or unique about yourself and make a call to action of some sort. So you tell them what you're doing, tell them what you were just doing before this, tell them what you want to do next, and tell them something memorable. Pretty simple if you just think about it. And the other thing that's nice about this is if you do develop a pitch using this 4-part method, it's somewhat easy to modify the pitch depending on the scenario and situation where it's being used or the person and the audience you're using it with. So now we'll go into basically an example of the pitch and separate it into 4 parts. Part 1, tell them what you're doing. So here is an example. I'm working as an HR assistant at a mid-sized manufacturer in Brooklyn and nearing completion of my BS degree in business from CUNY School of Professional Studies. Pretty simple. Part 2, tell them what you were doing before this. I had been working part-time for about 8 years as a receptionist when they moved me into HR as a coordinator. And in this role, I've realized that it's time to take the next step and pursue my bachelor's degree if I really want to truly build my career. So that was part 2. Part 3, tell them what you want to do next. My classes in business strategy, HR management, and even psychology helped me realize my career potential in HR. I'm looking for a higher level role related to talent recruitment and employee relations. Last but not least, part 4, tell them something memorable about yourself and make a call to action. I've been active in crafting the first ever company-wide DEI initiative. So I'm planning to apply for a full-time position that is opening on my team this summer. Since you've been working in the HR field successfully for a while, what advice do you have for me to make my case for the new position? So that was something memorable and a call to action. So when you really think about it, as I had said before, this is really just simplifying a pitch into 4 parts. Tell them what you're doing. In many of your situations, this is probably a quick mention of your work and what you're studying. Or if you've already graduated, this is a mention of your work and what you did study. For part 2, you would talk about what you were doing before this. So maybe the job you held before this one. Or if you are in a graduate program, maybe mention what your undergraduate program was. For the third part, and this can be one of the most difficult parts to articulate, this is where you really want to make sure that you're giving them a clear indication of what it is that you truly hope to do next. What is your objective or your goal? And it doesn't necessarily have to be related to a specific job, but it's always a good idea to have some idea of what you want that person to understand about your initiatives and your goals. And then finally, part 4, this is your close. This is where you really want to tell them something that is unique and memorable about yourself, so that if they go on to meet 3 or 4 other people, when they see you the next time or when you follow up with them, they'll remember, if nothing else, that memorable thing about you. And finally, a call to action. That can be asking them a question that would, sort of encourage them to talk more with you. Or it could be saying, would it be okay if I followed up with you and had a cup of coffee? So it's sort of part 4 is one of the sections in the pitch that you can really use to, make yourself memorable, but also line up what the next step might be. So that is the pitch simplified. Now, at this point, we will move into breakout rooms. And this is where we are giving you an opportunity to practice. You'll be randomly assigned to a breakout room with a small group of other attendees. You should take turns introducing yourselves. It's not likely that you've met previously, but if you have, certainly do the best you can to introduce yourself to the others in the group. Try using a new pitch, or simply talk about what you might include in your pitch if you were putting together your pitch. Sort of help one another out with developing what the beginnings could be for a pitch. And finally, share feedback. If you think something sounds really terrific and really compelling that someone is sharing with you, let them know. What we'll do is we'll give you around 10 minutes to go through and do the breakout room. If for some reason you have trouble, feel free to come back to the main room and we'll reassign you. Try to use this as an opportunity to learn, and as an opportunity to practice networking and talking with people you don't know in a setting that's very low stakes. We hope that you'll take advantage and see how it goes. So thank you for participating in the breakout exercise activity for networking and pitching. We do have a relatively small group, and I thought before I move on, is anyone interested in sharing a little bit about the experience, or telling the rest of the group how it went? No pressure. If not, I'll move into the rest of the material, but I just thought it might be a nice opportunity to share with the greater group as well. Okay, we'll go ahead and move ahead. If anyone does think of something, you're certainly welcome to send it in the chat. And that also use this as an opportunity to remind everyone that if you do have questions, feel free to send those in the chat. And then once I've gone over the material, I will be happy to address them. So now I'm going to give you a couple of pointers for pitching in the virtual setting. As I had mentioned, still many programs and activities are happening online. And these are just some pointers that will be helpful as you do attend those types of virtual events. Sometimes I suggest getting there and logging in a couple of minutes early, so that you have the opportunity to chat with other participants or the presenter. herself before the webinar begins. Sometimes that's a way to make yourself memorable. Think about using a script. It's pretty easy to do so when you're participating in a video conference setting. Certainly, anytime you ask a question or speak as part of the group, introduce yourself. And then if you speak again later, repeat your name. It's always a good idea to do so, particularly if you have a relatively common name or if it's a large group with a lot of people you don't know or you don't know well. It's also a great idea to try and be a good listener and pay close attention when others are speaking, whether it's the presenter or another attendee, and take notes. That's another thing that's relatively easy to do in the virtual setting versus an in-person type of event or setting. Sometimes if you were at an in-person event, like a reception, and you're standing there and you have some hors d'oeuvres and a drink, it's hard to really take notes and navigate, but when you're online, it's much easier. And finally, another pointer for virtual events is to use the same photo on your LinkedIn that you use as your thumbnail in Zoom or WebEx or other conferencing programs. You also could use the same one if you use Gmail or if you have Outlook, even for your work email. That's a great way to sort of make yourself memorable in the virtual sense. And if you have a consistent profile photo for all of these different platforms, it makes you that much more memorable to others if you connect with them on LinkedIn. So now, speaking of LinkedIn, I'm going to take a couple of minutes and just give you some basic pointers on using LinkedIn effectively and really leveraging it as a tool for networking and professional development and job search. I'll go over some of these pointers and then I'll take a couple of minutes and show you some of these things on my profile. And then we'll go through, I'll talk a little bit more about LinkedIn, and then we'll do some Q&A. So one of the most important things to do on your LinkedIn profile to really optimize it as best you can is to take advantage of that intro section. It's the little line right underneath your photo. And that is something that if you leave it as is, as the default, it will be whatever your current or most recent job title is. But I think many people miss out on this as an opportunity to really pitch yourself, because you can change that intro section to whatever you would like for it to be. And make it unique so that when someone looks at your thumbnail and they look at your profile, they can see right in the introductory section some important and unique characteristics about you, rather than just leaving it as the default as your job title, because many times, especially if you're looking for a new position or you're trying to make a career change, that your current job title is not really indicative of what you're hoping to do. Another important thing about your profile is to highlight your most relevant skills. So you want to think about the types of jobs that you're looking for and what you're applying for, and the skill sets that are included in those job descriptions are going to be the most relevant skill sets for your job search. Or if you're simply using LinkedIn as a way to network and build your network, not necessarily for an active job search, think about the types of things that you do in your work and the skill sets that you've developed in your work, and make sure that those are right on top. It's important to include lots of different skills on your LinkedIn profile, but make sure that the most relevant and recent skills are at the top. You also have the ability to add credibility to those skills with endorsements. So someone else who you work with or someone who knows about your competencies can endorse those competencies on your profile. And that adds credibility because LinkedIn will indicate how many people have said, yes, Shannon Gallo does have the skill set of presentations. One of the other most important things to do is review your profile regularly. Make sure that everything on there is current, particularly if you work in certain fields that are very dependent on technology skills. You want to make sure that if you have specific versions of a software or you have technology skills that are outdated that you no longer use, or technology skills that are not as regularly used in the types of jobs that you're applying for, you want to remove those and make sure that your more current skill sets are updated on the profile. The same thing is true with your coursework. There is a way to add a section and to list selected courses. So that's another thing that you can do is as you work your way through your degree and you take more courses, add them to your profile. Make sure that it's current and that it's updated regularly. I already mentioned the profile photo. Make sure that it is a fairly recent photo of yourself and that it's the same photo you're using across other platforms. I also suggest adding a unique cover photo, which can really make your profile stand out. The other thing about including photos on your LinkedIn profile is that I understand that LinkedIn sets up their site and their algorithms so that profiles that include photos are listed higher than those profiles that do not when someone is using the search features. So the more that you can complete on your profile and add a profile photo, the more likely that your profile will come up higher in search results. I've already talked about the intro section. Some other sections in your LinkedIn profile, I think at a minimum that could be included or could be added to really incorporate more detail about your experience and your competencies are the headline, the summary, the about me section is very important. Work samples, media samples, those are all sections that can be added to your profile. And finally, last but not least, pay close attention to the settings and the privacy controls within the site. LinkedIn is very, very good at allowing you to have a lot of privacy or a little bit of privacy and to really make certain settings based on however you're most comfortable. I think that this site does a very, very good job of allowing its users to open their profiles up or close profiles down to the level at which they're most comfortable. Now, I do suggest that if you are actively job searching, that at a minimum, you do complete a LinkedIn profile, at least with the basic sections and fields, and you add a simple profile photo. Even if you're not necessarily using the site that actively, you want to make sure that if you are applying for jobs and an employer happens to look, that they at least that you have a presence on LinkedIn. Otherwise, they may be concerned that they aren't able to really see much of a presence on LinkedIn, which is really seen as a crucial part of professional development. So now I'll take a couple of minutes and just show you a few things on my profile. Okay, I had mentioned this section here, the intro section. Here, let me go to. Let me go to the public. Oh, here it is. Okay, so this is what my profile looks like to most people public. This is sort of what my profile looks like to most people publicly. As you can see, I have this section so that I've put specifically
for your LinkedIn.
I'm sorry?
You can't see your LinkedIn. It's still
Oh
on
my
the
goodness, thank you so much. Better?
Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, so as you can see here, this is what my profile looks like to the public. This is basically what someone who's not necessarily connected with me is able to see. And I show you this because, you know, I have it set where individuals are able to see a fair amount of information, but not too much. Let me go back here. This is the profile that looks, what it looks like to me. And I've got it set up just so that I can show you some examples later with job search and what LinkedIn will do. But LinkedIn will allow you, well, will really help you if you put in different types of search terms. It will show you jobs that relate to those search terms. And it really saves you time because you don't have to spend a long time finding different types of things. I mentioned the About section, which I've taken some time to make specific. This is something that you do have the ability on LinkedIn to, be a little bit more wordy and to add a little bit more content than you might on a resume. But this is also where you could use a modified pitch. So that's, sort of another way that you could use the pitch besides in a networking setting. As you can see on here, I have my experience listed, the different positions. I added a link to the Office of Career Services so that people can see more specifically, easily, the work that I do in that office. I list my education. I included some leadership activities that I participated in when I was in college myself. I've also listed other volunteerism that I'm involved with. So that's listed here. And then finally, as I had mentioned, the skills section and those endorsements. So I've got program development here right on top. 4 colleagues have endorsed that. Resume writing. This one has several colleagues and others in my network who have endorsed that as a skill set. Student affairs is another one. And then if someone clicks here, they can see all 46 of my skill sets, but I've got it so that these 3 are the ones on top. Okay. A couple of other things about LinkedIn. When you are using the site, one of the most effective ways to make it useful is to build connections. The easiest way to get started in building those connections is to invite people your colleagues and classmates, even your instructors, friends of yours. That's sort of the easiest way to get started. Once you use the site a little bit more readily and you're starting to connect with people you might meet in networking scenarios, I typically suggest that you add a note. That always helps to help the person understand why you're interested in connecting with them. I mentioned endorsing skills. A great way to get your skills endorsed is to endorse the skills of others. You could see I have a handful of recommendations on my profile. That also helps when you're trying to reference, when you're trying to build your employment references. Recommendations on LinkedIn can be a great way to do that. I had mentioned a little bit about some of the things you can add to your profile. Another important thing is to really utilize the activity feed. If people are posting articles, you can easily like or love an article. If someone posts about getting a new position, you can easily react with a celebration or other icons. Adding hashtags in your activity feed can really help people follow you. and follow the content that you're sharing. Groups are always an easy way to get involved on LinkedIn. CUNY SPS does have a group. There are other groups based on your industry, your geographic area, those kinds of things. And a couple of pointers just as far as, how to get more comfortable and confident using LinkedIn. Set a schedule for yourself. Set some reminders to regularly use the site. If you're just starting out and you're just starting to get comfortable with the site, once you've got your profile set, I encourage you to reach out to a career advisor. We can help you go through it and take a look at it, make sure that you're ready to go and using the site regularly. And then set a schedule, maybe twice a week, you'll spend 15 minutes on LinkedIn. And then from there, as you see some results and activity, maybe you'll feel comfortable increasing usage. And finally, don't wait. Connect with someone ASAP. So if you met someone in tonight's webinar, I think that's a great way to put into practice some of the advice that I've shared. Take that time to find them on LinkedIn and ask them to connect with you. They'll likely be eager to build their network, just like you're eager to build yours. I realize that we're getting close to time. So I am happy to talk more about LinkedIn. I would encourage, as I had said before, all of you to reach out to your career advisors and talk more about your LinkedIn profile and to learn more about some of the things that you can do on the site. It's very, very useful, as I had said, for job searching. It's also a really important way to prepare for interviews and researching. One of the first things that I do when I'm helping someone prepare for an interview is find the person they're going to be meeting with and see what we can learn about them and their background and their career, because that can help you really get an idea of the person you're going to be meeting with. It's certainly, I think it also shows that you're doing your homework ahead of job interviews. And it's, I don't know that enough people use LinkedIn as a research tool, but it's definitely something that I suggest. At this point, I'm going to take a moment and if there are any questions, I would love to address some of those from the group. If you do have a question, feel free to send it in the chat and I will address them as they come in. I will go over a few things. I know that some of you may have attended these kinds of programs before. I hope that the material is useful to you. I hope that you will take this as an opportunity to try a network, put some of the pointers and advice I've shared into practice. I also encourage you, as you'll see in the chat, I encourage you to reach out to our office. We, are eager to support you as you pursue your career goals, whether you're a current student or an alum. Certainly, my office is available to assist you. And I'll close by saying thank you to all of you who have attended this evening. I also would like to thank our captioner for providing captions for the webinar. And last but not least, Nikita Cassidy. She is our data and administrative coordinator in our career services office. She's also an SPS alum. And so I'd just like to thank Nikita for her work to make sure that the webinar ran smoothly this evening. And with that, we'll close.